Okay, so you want to own a solar installation company. Buy some trucks, hire a crew, bolt panels to rooftops, collect $30,000 per house. The panels cost you $3,200 wholesale. The crew spends a day and a half on the roof. Up until last year, your customer got a 30% federal tax credit that made the sticker price feel painless. That credit expired at the end of 2025. Now, the sticker price is the real price. But there are 145 million residential properties in the United States, and even if 1% want solar this year, that is 1.45 million rooftops. You only need 150 of them. Walk onto a residential job site in Phoenix on an August morning. 4 guys on a roof pitched steep enough that you have to brace your feet sideways to stand. 110-degree heat, lag bolts into rafters, 45-pound panels up an extension ladder 2 at a time. Roof surface north of 150 degrees by early afternoon. If anyone slips, your workers' comp claim starts at $200,000. That crew will finish by Thursday. The system will sit idle for 2 to 6 months, waiting for the utility to flip the switch and let it feed power into the grid. You will not see a dollar of final payment until they do. The U.S. residential solar market generates roughly $14 to $16 billion a year. In 2023, the industry hit a peak of 6.8 gigawatts, about 650,000 systems. Then, California changed one rule. Interest rates climbed above 7%, and by 2024, installations dropped 31%. More than 300 companies in California alone shut down within 18 months. There are roughly 11,000 solar installers in the U.S. The top 5 national players control about a quarter of the market. The other 70+% belongs to small regional crews, maybe a dozen people doing 10 to 15 jobs a month. That is the business you would be entering. And most of your time and money will not be spent on the roof. It will be spent on financing, paperwork, and waiting. The rooftop part is almost the easy part. There are 3 ways a homeowner pays for a solar system, and which one they choose changes everything about how much money you actually make. The first is cash. A customer writes you a check for $22,000 to $28,000 for an 8-kilowatt system. Your all-in cost is $16,000 to $19,000. You keep $6,000 to $9,000 in gross profit. Simple. But almost nobody does this. Most people do not have $25,000 sitting around for a home improvement project. The second is a solar loan. Finance companies offer homeowners loans at below-market rates, something like 4.99% instead of the 9+% you would get from a regular bank. Sounds great for the homeowner, but someone has to pay for that discount. That someone is you. The lender charges you what the industry calls a dealer fee, typically 15 to 35% of the loan amount, deducted before you ever see the money. So you inflate the contract price to somewhere around $38,000. The lender takes roughly $10,000 off the top. You receive the base cash price. Your actual margin is roughly the same as a cash deal, but the contract price the customer signed is 40% higher than what you would have charged for cash. The customer does not always understand this. The third way is the one that reveals what this industry actually is. A PPA, a power purchase agreement, or a lease. A national company like Sunrun pays you a construction fee of $3 to $360 per watt to install a system on someone's roof. You are the contractor. You bolt the panels up, wire the inverters, pass inspection. Then you walk away. Sunrun owns the system, not the homeowner. Sunrun collects monthly payments from the homeowner for 20+ years. Sunrun claims the federal tax credit on that system because, as the law stands right now, third-party-owned commercial systems still qualify, even though the homeowner credit expired. The homeowner looks up at panels on their own roof that they do not own, generating electricity they do not control, under a contract they signed for 2 decades. Your cut as the installer is $6,000 to $9,600 per system. The homeowner's roof has become someone else's power plant. This is not really an energy company. It is a finance company that happens to bolt things to roofs. Before you install your first panel, you need a contractor license. In California, that is a C46 solar contractor or C10 electrical license. In Texas, you need a master electrician certificate. Every state has its own requirements, its own exam, its own surety bond between $15,000 and $25,000. On top of that, most states and customers expect a NABCEP certification, the solar industry's version of a board-certified license, another $2,000 or so, including coursework and the exam. Then you need trucks, 2 to 3 heavy-duty pickups, Ford F-250s or Ram 2500s, outfitted with ladder racks and toolboxes, plus an enclosed equipment trailer. That is close to 6 figures before your first employee clocks in. Initial inventory of racking rails, wiring, safety harnesses, thermal cameras, and hand tools runs another $50,000. Insurance is where rooftop work separates itself from most small businesses. Workers' compensation for rooftop electrical labor runs roughly $18 for every $100 of payroll, because insurers see rooftop electrical as one of the riskier job categories. Add general liability at $1 million per occurrence, commercial auto for the fleet, and your total insurance bill in year 1 is around $50,000. Marketing and CRM setup, website, branding, your first batch of digital leads, proposal software like Aurora Solar or Open Solar, another $40,000. And then the number that kills unprepared operators: working capital. From the day your crew finishes a roof to the day you receive final payment, 1 to 3 months pass. During that gap, you are paying wages, buying hardware for the next job, and covering overhead on cash you do not have yet. You need at least $100,000 in reserve just to survive the float. There is also a cost that does not show up in any startup checklist: roof condition liability. Before you bolt anything down, you assess the roof. If it fails within 5 years, the homeowner's attorney is coming after you, not the roofer. Some operators carry an additional $15,000 per year in roof warranty reserve. Total startup capital for a 5 to 10-person crew: $270,000 to $575,000. That's not franchise territory, but it is not a laptop in a garage startup either. Let me follow $32,000 from the moment a homeowner signs a loan contract to show you where every dollar actually goes. The finance company takes $8,000 as its dealer fee before you see anything. That is 25% gone on day 1. The sales rep who knocked on the door earns a commission of $2,800. Your digital marketing and lead generation cost another $2,000. The solar panels themselves, 20 modules at 400 watts each, cost $3,200. 20 microinverters, the small boxes that convert DC power from each panel into usable AC electricity, cost $3,000. Racking, wiring, disconnect boxes, and mounting hardware, what the industry calls balance of system, cost $2,400. Permit application and utility interconnection fees cost $900. Your 4-person crew's fully loaded wages for a day and a half on the roof cost $3,600. Insurance allocation for that job costs $800. Your share of vehicle costs, fuel, warehouse overhead, and software for that single install is about $1,100. Total cost, $27,800. You keep $4,200. That is a 13% margin on the contract price. But you will not receive that $4,200 for another 1 to 3 months because the final milestone is permission to operate from the utility. If the utility's interconnection queue is backed up, and it often is because a local grid transformer hit capacity and requires an engineering study that takes 2 to 3 months, your money sits in someone else's approval process while you are already paying next week's crew. Add up the sales commission and marketing spend on that one customer, roughly $4,800. The panels on the roof cost $3,200. You spent more getting the customer to say yes than you spent on the actual hardware sitting on their house. Customer acquisition cost is the #1 killer of solar installers. Nobody wakes up on a Tuesday morning thinking, "Today, I need to buy a solar system." It's not like groceries or gas where the need is obvious. You have to create the demand. And the way you create it relies on a quirk of human psychology. The pitch is never, "You can save $200 a month." It is, "You are losing $200 a month to the utility company right now." Same number, completely different emotional weight. People react to the idea of losing something about twice as strongly as they react to gaining the same thing. There is a name for that: loss aversion. That gap is what the entire door-to-door sales model runs on. A 22-year-old setter in a company polo knocks on doors in a subdivision built in 2004. The homeowner has seen 3 other solar reps this month. The kid has about 8 seconds before the door closes. His opener is something like, "I noticed your roof faces south and your electric bill is probably around $220 a month. What if I could cut that in half starting next month and it costs nothing up front?" The homeowner pauses. That pause cost you $4,500 in total acquisition spend to manufacture. Contact rate on door knocking is about 12%. Of those, roughly 2/3 sit for a full presentation. Of those, about a quarter sign. Total cost to acquire one customer through door-to-door, $3,500 to $5,500. Digital leads through Google and Facebook cost around $150 per lead, with a 10 to 15% close rate, putting your total digital customer acquisition cost at $3,200 to $5,000. Referrals cost around $750 per closed deal, by far the cheapest, but you cannot scale referrals to 150 installs a year, and sales rep annual turnover exceeds 80%, so you are perpetually training new people who burn through expensive leads before they learn how to close. CAC eats up roughly 18% of total job revenue. In most businesses, marketing is a line item. In solar, marketing is not a department. It is the entire business model. Now, follow a solar panel from where it is born to where it ends up. The polysilicon is refined in China, cast into ingots, sliced into wafers, assembled into cells, and laminated into modules at factories across Southeast Asia. The finished panel crosses the Pacific on a container ship and clears customs at the port of Long Beach. It sits in a distributor warehouse in Phoenix for 2 to 3 weeks, gets loaded onto your truck on a Tuesday morning, and by Thursday afternoon, it is bolted to a stranger's roof in Scottsdale. The homeowner signed a 20-year contract. The electricity flows into a grid someone else controls. The asset belongs to a company the homeowner has never met. Every step adds cost, and any step can get disrupted by a policy change you had nothing to do with. U.S. trade tariffs on solar imports have pushed the price of panels assembled domestically to around 40 cents per watt, compared to about 25 cents if there were no tariffs. Your hardware cost can jump 30% based on a trade decision made in Washington that has nothing to do with solar economics. The real money in this industry is not on the roof. It lives in the financial architecture underneath. When Sunrun installs a system through a PPA, they do not just collect monthly payments. They claim the federal investment tax credit. They sell green energy credits to companies that need to offset their own carbon footprint. They bundle thousands of 20-year contracts together and sell them to pension funds and institutional investors as packaged securities. A single rooftop becomes a recurring revenue stream for 2 decades. And if you, the installer, build an operations and maintenance book alongside your installation business, you unlock the same recurring logic at a smaller scale. Panel cleaning contracts at a few $100s per year. Critter guards, the wire mesh that keeps squirrels from chewing cables under the panels, at around $800. EV charger installations at around $2,000. Battery retrofit sales at around $12,000. Each turns a one-time transaction into recurring revenue. When a solar installer sells the business, the typical price is 3 to 5.5 times annual operating profit. Build an O&M base of 500 customers paying annual contracts, and the valuation model looks completely different. Here is what can destroy a solar installation business overnight, and none of it has anything to do with how well you run your operation. On April 15, 2023, California's NEM 3.0 took effect. The export rate, what the utility pays homeowners for excess electricity sent to the grid, dropped from about 30 cents per kilowatt hour under NEM 2.0 to roughly 5 to 8 cents under NEM 3.0, a 75% cut. System payback jumped from 5 or 6 years to 9 to 11. More than 300 California installers closed within 18 months. Those were not bad companies. They were ordinary companies in a market where one policy change moved the math. Then the financing dominoes fell. Sunlight Financial filed for bankruptcy in October 2023. Rising interest rates caused more homeowners to default, and the banks funding those loans pulled out. Mosaic stopped issuing new loans and filed for bankruptcy in mid-2025 after it could no longer sell its loan bundles to other banks willing to hold them long-term. SunPower, one of the oldest names in American solar, filed for bankruptcy in August 2024. Its core assets were acquired by Complete Solaria for $45 million in cash. A company worth over $9 billion in 2021 sold for the price of a nice apartment building. Sunnova saw its stock collapse over 90% between 2022 and 2025, under roughly $10 billion in total debt, and filed for bankruptcy in June 2025. Pink Energy, formerly Power Home Solar, shut down abruptly in September 2022 after a wave of complaints about faulty equipment and deceptive sales, then filed for liquidation a month later. Tens of thousands of homeowners were left with broken systems and active loan payments. When a lender you depend on goes bankrupt, your pipeline of signed contracts waiting for funding becomes worthless overnight. One bureaucrat in Sacramento signed NEM 3.0. 300 companies died. And the pattern repeated at the federal level. For over a decade, the government gave homeowners a 30% tax credit, the single biggest reason the math worked. The Inflation Reduction Act was supposed to lock it through 2032. Then, in July 2025, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, and the residential tax credit was terminated effective December 31st, 2025. No phase down, just gone. The only systems that still qualify for a federal credit in 2026 are third-party owned, under a different section of the tax code that expires at the end of 2027. If you are selling cash or loan deals to homeowners right now, that 30% is no longer part of your pitch. Same company, same market, same team of 15 people. Good year versus bad year. In the good year, interest rates are manageable, policy is stable, your close rate holds at 28%, and your average system sells at $30,000 with no discounting. You install 200 systems. Revenue, $6 million. Gross margin at 32%, $1,920,000. Total customer acquisition cost at $4,000 per install, $800,000. Fixed overhead, $650,000. Owner net income, $470,000. You reinvest a quarter of that into a second truck and 2 new hires for next year's growth. In the bad year, NEM 3.0 hits your state. Rates spike to 8%. Homeowners hesitate because the payback math no longer works without the tax credit. Your pipeline stalls. Leads that used to close in 2 weeks now take 6. Your setters are knocking twice as many doors to book half as many appointments. You install 90 systems. Revenue, $2,520,000, because you are cutting prices to around $28,000 per job just to keep the pipeline moving. Gross margin drops to 22% because you are discounting to compete. $554,400. CAC rises to $5,000 per install because scared customers need more touches, more follow-ups, more time from your closer before they commit. $450,000. 2 of your best sales reps leave for a competitor offering higher per-deal commissions. The replacement will not produce for 3 months. Fixed overhead compresses but has a floor. $580,000. Owner net income, negative $475,600. From positive $470,000 to negative $475,600. A gap of nearly $1 million. Not because you made different decisions, because someone in a state capital or a federal agency changed a number on a form. The pattern is not random. Every time the federal tax credit was scheduled to expire, in 2006, 2016, 2020, the industry surged with installations rushing to beat the deadline, then crashed about a third the following quarter when the deadline got extended anyway. Your entire P&L is a footnote in someone else's policy memo. The installers who survive build specific defenses. First, geographic diversification. They do not operate in one state. A company running crews in Texas, Florida, and Illinois is not exposed to a single state's decision about how much it pays homeowners for excess solar power. When California collapsed, companies with operations in Sunbelt states with favorable policy barely felt it. Second, financing redundancy. They maintain active dealer agreements with at least 3 finance partners. When Mosaic went down, the operators who had GoodLeap, Dividend Finance, and a local credit union as backups switched overnight. The operators who were exclusive with Mosaic lost their entire funded pipeline. Third, battery attachment. After NEM 3.0 killed the economics of selling electricity back to the grid, the smart installers started pairing every system with a home battery. Tesla Powerwall or Enphase IQ battery. Battery attachment rates in California surged from 10% to over 65%. The job ticket went from $30,000 to $45,000 or even $55,000. Margins on storage are higher because the installation complexity justifies the markup. And the homeowner who adds a battery no longer cares about the export rate because they are using their own stored power after sunset instead of selling it back at 5 cents. Fourth, the shift to third-party ownership. With the homeowner credit gone, the only federal incentive left flows through PPA and lease structures. The installers who already had relationships with Sunrun or other national PPA platforms adapted immediately. The ones still selling cash and loan deals are repricing every proposal from scratch. The operators who combine all 4, geographic spread, multiple finance channels, storage attachment above 50%, and PPA relationships are the ones private equity firms are buying at 4 to 6 times annual operating profit. Let me run the full P&L for a regional installer doing 150 systems a year at an average contract price of $30,000. Annual revenue, $4.5 million. Hardware, $1.2 million. Direct labor, $525,000. Permitting and interconnection, $150,000. Cost of goods sold, $1,875,000 or 41.7%. Gross profit, $2,625,000. Sales commissions at $3,000 per install, $450,000. Marketing at $2,000 per install, $300,000. Net gross margin after CAC, $1,875,000. Overhead, warehouse, $90,000. Fleet, $75,000. Management salaries, $320,000. Insurance, $85,000. Software, $40,000. Legal, $35,000. Miscellaneous, $45,000. Total overhead, $690,000. Owner take-home before taxes, $1,185,000 on paper, roughly 26% of revenue. After reinvestment and debt service on startup capital, the owner's actual income sits between $400,000 and $600,000 in a good year. A small regional installer doing around 100 systems clears $150,000 to $350,000. In a bad year, losses of $200,000 to $500,000 are not outlier events. They are cyclical certainties that happen every time policy shifts or interest rates spike. Roof leak warranty liability follows you for 5 to 10 years after the install. Passive income does not exist in this business. Not at one location, not at 10. Here is what a typical Monday looks like for the operator running this well. Your project coordinator logs into the utility portal and sees that 3 systems completed 2 months ago are still waiting for permission to operate. The utility's interconnection queue is backed up because a local grid transformer is at capacity. Those 3 jobs represent $90,000 in final payments you cannot collect. Meanwhile, you submitted permits last week for 4 new jobs across 2 different counties. One county uses Solar App Plus, an automated platform that approves plans same day. The other requires a paper application, a $45 check, and a 3-week review by an inspector who has 200 applications ahead of yours. Same state, same job size, but one gets built next week and the other sits until next month. There are over 20,000 local permitting authorities in the United States, each with its own forms, fees, and inspection schedules. You spend more time managing paperwork than managing people. The version of this business that works is the one run by an operator who diversified across 3 states, maintained 4 finance partners, attached batteries to 60% of jobs, and built a maintenance book alongside the installation business. That owner clears $550,000 a year on 250 installs and sleeps at night. The version that fails is the one run by an equally competent operator who bet everything on California, signed an exclusive deal with one lender, sold standalone solar without storage, and never sold a maintenance contract. That owner filed for bankruptcy when NEM 3.0 hit. Same skill set, same market knowledge, same industry. Different decisions made before the first panel left the truck. The difference wasn't talent or effort, it was architecture. One built a business that could absorb a policy shock. The other built a business that was the policy shock. One has recurring revenue from 400 maintenance customers generating cash flow even when new installations stall. The other has nothing coming in the moment the pipeline dries up. The panels were never the product. The product was a 20-year financial contract attached to someone else's roof, underwritten by a policy that could change while the ink was still drying.